Up, dude. Come on up. What's your name? Everett. Come on up here, Everett. I need you to pick a weapon. I've got some weaponry on the floor. Parents, are you okay with this? You will not use this against your sister, Everett. So let's start. You want to pick up these. These are two elven blades, short swords. You want to hold those. And they've got golden gilding on the sides, a curved blade. What do you think? You feel like you could use those to protect yourself? All right. Let's switch over here. Put those down there. And we've got a Morgul blade here. This is a double-handed broadsword. What do you think about that? Do you think you could swing that around a little bit? You want to try it? Go for it. Yeah, look at that. Heck yeah. All right. Now, go ahead and put that one back down, Everett. Got another one you can pick from here. And this is a Swiss 13th century halberd. It's a pole arm. It's kind of got an extension pole with a sword on the end. How does that feel in your hands? You feel pretty good? You think you could do some defensive work with that if somebody was trying to attack you? Yeah, we got one more here. Go ahead and put that one down. Everett, this one might be up a little more it's kind of your size and scale. That's a Maasai spear straight from Africa, actually in Kenya. And so how does that one feel? Do you think you could defend yourself with that? So if an attacker was coming at you, what would you do with that thing? Maybe just kind of poke them and keep them away or something? Now, if I told you, Everett, you can put that one down too, that you had to pick one of these weapons to defend yourself because somebody was going to attack you this Thanksgiving, which one would you pick? He goes for the Morgul blade. I love it. Awesome. The big old sword. The bigger the sword, the more, powerful you would be. Now, here's the thing though, Everett. What if I told you that the attack was not going to be somebody in front of you? It was going to be behind you. And then what if I told you that the attacker was going to be invisible? How well do you think you could defend yourself with that sword? It would be a little bit harder, wouldn't it? Yeah. Now, here's the other thing. What if the attack wasn't a person like me in front of you? What if it was actually in your head, in your brain? A sword's not going to do you very much good, is it? All right. Can we give it up for Everett? Thank you for coming up here. You can go back to your seat. We're making the point here about the importance of knowing if an attack is coming, knowing the nature of the attack, and then being skilled and adept at using a weapon to defend yourself against the attack. We're starting a new series today, and it's very timely for the holiday season. It's called Prepare for Battle, Seasonal Struggles. And there's a lot of great things about Thanksgiving and Christmas, the holiday season. Of course, there's opportunities to reflect on our gratitude, all the countless blessings. What a great thing. Every year we get a time of life where we just get to really focus on all the things we're thankful for. There's times with family and friends, gatherings and connections. And ultimately, there's a remembrance of all that God's done, is doing, and will do in our lives and for our world. And so there's all these great things, but there's some real struggles that are built into the holiday seasons. Some of you know this very, very acutely. Yes, there's busyness. Anybody just even talking about, let me just do it, Christmas. Is anybody's heart rate going up? Like, oh my gosh, there's so much I got to do. There's a ton of stressors with our time. And then finances. If everything's great financially, you don't feel this, but many people, especially this year with the inflation, feel the financial pressures. And it is distinctly hard for many men who are fathers and wanting to be able to provide for your family. And if you feel like you're not able to do everything that you want to do, it can cause you to feel not good on the inside. And then there's all the seasonal stuff with depression. We know that the sunlight decreases, and so who would have guessed? Like the cold glow of a TV doesn't do the same thing as the warm glow of the sun. It doesn't, and so depression can kick in, and that is especially triggered by those who don't have loved ones with you in this holiday season, whether it's you didn't grow up with a healthy, functional family, or you had that, and that individual, perhaps this is even the first holiday season that you're going to have to face it without somebody that you love here with you. And I know what that feels like. It can be a nagging, gnawing ache. It can also just be an acute shooting pain that hits into your heart. And so knowing this is coming can just create a horrible feeling of dread. And I haven't even brought up all the family times. I want to ask, just for a show of hands, if you'd raise your hand if you're going to do a Thanksgiving meal with family or friends. If you're going to do at least one Thanksgiving meal, keep it up if you're going to do 2 Thanksgiving meals. Keep your hand up if you're going to be in 3 different Thanksgiving meals. There's still a bunch of hands up. Let's try 4. Keep it up if you're going to be at 4 different There was 5 last night. Somebody was going to have 5 different family Thanksgivings. And I've heard of people going into the Christmas season doing like 6 or more due to a blended family and the in-laws and all those different things. And so what happens is, no matter how great your family may be, inevitably frustrations and hurt emerge. Comments are made, things are done or not done, and it can ruffle your feathers and it can stir things up. Or maybe it happened 10 years ago and you dread the holidays because you're going to have to be around Uncle Ned. Uncle Ned always, now, sorry, Ned, if you're out there and you're an uncle. I'm just kind of joking about the idea that there are family pressures and tensions that are not actually laughable. They are intense, they're painful, they're difficult. They can create fear, depression. There's shame that can creep in. Especially, I've talked to many people who don't have healthy whole families, and there's a huge sense of shame for decisions that were made that have led to that. There are people who've always wanted to have healthy whole families who can't have them or haven't been able to have them. And so I'm setting the stage for the seasonal battles that we're going to face. Battles out there with people, and then battles in here, in our hearts and our minds. Now, the American Psychological Association published a list of helpful coping strategies. And I kind of looked through their list, and it's got good stuff. Practice mindfulness and meditation, give yourself permission to say no or take a break, have boundaries, get some fresh air and sunlight and exercise, stay in therapy if you're in therapy. These are all really, really, good things. But the Bible gives us a different perspective on all this stuff. It introduces the idea of an invisible realm where there is truly a battle that is at hand. And we're using the term spiritual warfare to describe the conflict that exists and is intensely associated in our hearts and minds and relationships in the holiday season. When Jesus saw the crowds, and I'm going to read this a little different. When Jesus saw all of us this Thanksgiving season, he has compassion for us because we are harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. Jesus looked out and saw people getting harassed. Now, who or what was harassing them? Right? Because if you're getting harassed, there's an agent that is doing the harassing. It doesn't say in this passage. But a little later, at the end of his life, in John 17, Jesus prays this prayer. Holy Father, protect them. He's speaking about his followers. By the power of your name, the name you gave me, so that they may be one as we are one. So he's talking about the threat of division and fracturing of his followers. And then he says, my prayer is not that you take them out of the world, so don't protect them by whisking them off to heaven. He says, protect them from the evil one. Why does Jesus pray to God the Father for us to be protected from the evil one? It's because we're in danger of being attacked, and jumped, and mugged, and opposed by the evil one. Now, Jesus called the evil one Satan. Hasatan is actually a noun. It's the adversary, the accuser. The devil, diabolos, slanderer, maligner. The enemy, the prince of demons, the prince of this world, a liar and the father of lies, a murderer. This sounds a lot more like that sick, twisted, corrupt person from a TV show or a movie that you've seen, not the cartoon guy with the horns and the pitchfork and the red guy. No. This is different here, what Jesus is describing. He had numerous power encounters with the demonic realm that brought healing and deliverance. In fact, healing and deliverance from demonic infestation was one of the things Jesus was most known for. Some of the manifestations included sickness, epileptic seizures, inability to speak or see, craziness, self-harm, or threats to other. The Bible is clearly, Jesus and the rest of the Bible is clearly describing a spiritual reality that has drastic implications for our lives, even so far as our bodies. Jesus said about the devil and Satan that he has a kingdom, he has angels. Evil people are his sons. He bound a woman for 18 years in physical disability. He loves to snatch up the word of the kingdom from hearers. He loves to sow weeds among the wheat. He desired Peter. He said, "Give me Peter, because I want to sift him. I want to test him." He put betrayal into the heart of Judas, and eternal fire is prepared for him. So Jesus spoke about this reality. He hinted at the future, and it does not bode well for evil. Broadening our understanding to all of Scripture, we see there is an organized spiritual realm of evil, a mafia of sorts that is hell-bent on destruction of everything that God intended, what is good and right. God established a world where we were meant to be in perfect relationship with each other, with the created world itself, and with our Father. And the evil one, the devil, the Satan, he's trying to destroy all of that. He seduced Adam and Eve by slithering in and testing and tempting them to disbelieve God's goodness. He accused Job, and with God's permission, he was the source of Job's losses and suffering. He incited David to sin. He accused the high priest, Joshua. He prompted Ananias to lie. He caused Paul's thorn in the flesh. He hindered Paul's missionary plans. He disguises himself as an angel of light. And ultimately, the book of Revelation talks about how this spiritual influence of evil deceives the whole world, creating value systems that influence nations and organizations, philosophies and movements, even going so far as to use false miracles. What we see here is that we're up against some serious adversary. We've not only got our own disordered desires, our own tendency and proclivity to go our own way, which gets us in trouble, but we've got a tempter and a seducer who's tricking us and manipulating us to give in to those desires. And we're living in a world system that in many ways will justify and endorse those very things. And so there's the question we've got to ask. All right, if evil is real, which, by the way, for secular atheists who may be out there listening, who are just totally just laughing inside and dismissing all this, I would just ask you, well, how do you explain evil? What's your better explanation for the sick and the twisted things that human beings have done? Because I have an explanation that explains what the goodness and the beauty of love that we see in human beings. That's the image of God, his fingerprint. And I have an explanation from Scripture that explains the corruption we see in the world. Evil, Satan, preying on the brokenness that's implicit and latent in us all. And so we don't really know, not for sure, where Satan came from. There's a leading theory, and it's got some justification from the book of Isaiah and the book of Ezekiel, that Lucifer, a supreme created being, the highest of angels, kind of tried to usurp God's sovereign rule to become greater than God. And God cast him out of his presence. He gathered up a third of the angels and left to go, and now is the prince of this world. That we humans were meant to reign and rule for God, according to Genesis, and we forfeited that over to the enemy, and now he's taken that prerogative to become the prince of this world. And so back to the swords, and Everett coming up here and talking about getting jumped this Thanksgiving season. How does all this stuff, all this theology relate to your experience? When you begin to understand that there is a foe, an adversary, who wants to steal and kill and destroy you, it can be a wake-up call. And here's the thing. The enemy can't just snuff out your life. He can plague your life. According to on the basis of Scripture, you can have physical things that rack your body that are caused by him. You can. I'm not saying all sickness. Please hear me. I'm not saying all sickness or epileptic seizures are demonic, but I'm saying some could be. And here's the thing. Your joy, he loves to see you suffer and to lack joy and to rob you of your peace, to take your confidence and security and slash it to pieces. He just smiles. He laughs. He is merciless. Do you understand? He preys on us when we're at our weakest. He doesn't have compassion for us because we've had a really hard day and we didn't have a dad growing up and that person just treated us and I lost all this money. He capitalizes on it. And that's why children are so precious and so vulnerable and needing our protection, because the enemy jumps in on them, us, when we were kids, and traumatic things happen. He plants lies that ricochet like bullets throughout our souls as we grow up. And if we're not aware of it, we don't ever actually change the pattern. And so he loves seeing us suffer. He's here to steal and kill and destroy. The Apostle Paul said it this way, "For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood." He's saying our enemy is not a person. You might be like, you didn't meet my Uncle Ned. Sorry again, Ned. No, but this is saying that while a person can be the vehicle of the enemy's hurtful statements and actions, just as we can be a vehicle of God's good actions and words, the real enemy and opponent is the devil, is the enemy. And he goes on and he says, against the rulers and authorities and cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil. This is like a structured hierarchy. I mean, think about this. This isn't just one devil. This is like a demonic realm of evil operative, dare I say, even in this moment, in the thoughts and the attitudes of our hearts and our minds. The depression, the conflict, the stress, it's actually a spiritual battle. I'm not saying that there's not a reality to the hurtful things said and done and the conflict and the anger that can get sparked at the family gatherings and the cutoffs that exist in family members. I'm saying there's an evil source underneath it all. In a letter to the church in Corinth, Paul makes a comment. He says, so that we would not be outwitted by Satan, for we are not ignorant of his designs. What this is saying is that we can become mentally discerning and strategically prepared to know what kind of attacks could come our way, so that we wouldn't unknowingly step into them. And we wouldn't unknowingly get what's it called with a person who hides out and shoots you from afar? Sniper, thank you. So that we wouldn't get sniped this holiday season. And so I want to talk about specific strategies plotted in hell's strategy room against you for this holiday season. The first one is bitterness. What's fascinating about that verse I just mentioned about where Paul says, so that we're not unaware of the devil's strategies, the context of that is unforgiveness. Many of us are about to step into a trap. The net is going to pull up, and it's a net of bitterness. Something's going to get said, something's going to get done. Actually, some of us are already in the net. There's a knife in our pocket, and on the hilt of the blade, the word is forgiveness. There's a tool in our arsenal to escape the trap of the devil of bitterness, which takes our heart, makes our heart become in bondage, if we will use it. But we can actually avoid even stepping into the trap by choosing grace and forgiveness. towards people. I got an example of this. We got a dog, short term, only turned out to be for 2 days. A French bulldog. Loved this dog. Definitely was a handful. The cat was not a fan of the dog. And Julie, my wife, got allergies immediately. We had a Shih Tzu before. Apparently, they're hypoallergenic, and the dander of a French bulldog does not bode well with everybody because of allergies. And so we did not keep the dog. That was sad. I really liked this dog a lot. And what's crazy is all of a sudden, I found myself, I was like, I think the devil's tempting me to be bitter at my wife. She can't help she has allergies. Why would I be bitter at her? It's not her fault. And that's the thing about the devil. He doesn't play fair. He doesn't play by the rules. Your family member that keeps saying and doing those hurtful things is culpable and responsible for their actions. But think about it. There might be 50 generations deep of people who have set that family member up to act in a certain way. You don't know what happened to them when they were 10 and a half years old. And what happened after school or at the mall. You don't know the things, the bullets that are ricocheting around them. And so you might justify, I deserve to be bitter at this person and hold them and not forgive them because of the way they've treated me. I'm just saying, watch out for bitterness. Here's the thing about bitterness. I was bitter at the cat, Sophie. The next morning, I was like, I'm not going to feed you today. You're part of the reason we don't have a dog. And I was like, oh my gosh. This is comical and yet serious. We can let bitterness creep in. It bogs us down. It's like walking with mud on your shoes. Hinders your step. Limits your freedom. Causes you to only fire on 2 cylinders instead of 6. Bitterness is one of the devil's traps. Watch out for it. Second, subtle accusations. Oh man, this is where the devil is really good. It's not a conscious thought, you see. It's deeper than that. And unless we learn archaeological skill in our minds, we might never even realize all of a sudden we're feeling bad. Why am I feeling bad? I don't know. I have no clue. Well, I got a text from somebody. That text made me think of something, which made me think of Thanksgiving. And Thanksgiving made me think of my brother, and my brother and I have a tension. We've got a difficulty. Let's just say this is you. And like all of a sudden, you're feeling bad because you're feeling ashamed because of something that happened. Or you're feeling mad and pissed off because of something somebody said. They're just so subtle. You're not who you say you are. You're not who God says you are. You'll never be who God says you're supposed to be. God, you can't trust him. There are these subtle accusations. Next week, that's the whole focus. You got to come back next week. It's to help us develop our discernment, to be on guard against the subtle accusations and to slay them when they come. The next is intrusive thoughts. Just kill yourself. Some of you have never had that thought into your mind, but I'm saying watch out for it. If you have that thought to hurt yourself or someone else, it is not from God. It is straight out of the pit of hell. And we can train you in tools to know how to come against that. One of them is to make a vow. When our daughter passed on to be with the Lord, that was 5 years ago, and I had never had thoughts of ending my life until that happened. And I made a vow early on, I will never take my life. You see, there's good vows and bad vows. The bad vows are the ones that cause you to say, I will never let somebody treat me like that again. I will never trust like that again. These are demonic vows that the enemy wants us to make. We don't realize it, but we often do. But then there are good vows, like I will trust God even when life hurts like hell. And I will never take my life. I just want to encourage you right now. Would everybody just make that vow right now? I will never let the enemy defeat me by prompting me to hurt myself or take my life. Intrusive thoughts like that are straight out of the pit of hell. Just be aware. Don't coddle them. Don't think, oh, I deserve to feel this way because my life is so hard. No. Another, intimidation, fear, and anxiety. You're dreading what's to come. The enemy, if he can't wreck your relationships, He'll steal your joy. He'll take your happiness and your contentment and your thanksgiving and your satisfaction and peace in a typical everyday. If he can't ruin the family gathering in a couple weeks, maybe he could steal your peace and joy leading up to it for a couple weeks through intimidation, fear, and anxiety. Pessimism, cynicism, despair, and self-pity. It's pointless. It's hopeless. It'll never change. It's going to suck again. It's going to be hard again. All of these thoughts planted by the enemy in our hearts and minds can lead us to have this negative outlook. We're going to talk in 2 weeks about a very powerful strategy to overcome those. And so intimidation, fear, anxiety, pessimism, cynicism, despair, self-pity. Oh, guys, bitterness and self-pity have to be two of Satan's most effective tools against us. Self-pity is subtle because it's like, you look at other people and you compare and you think about your life and you feel like you deserve to have self-pity for yourself. And the devil's like, yes, please keep squeezing that broken glass. He wants you to bleed out in your self-pity. It's one of his strategies we can confront. The temptation to sin, this is one of his most familiar tactics, and yet, man, we get sucked into it again and again. And it's not just, like when I say temptation to sin, I don't just mean say something bad about somebody, to gossip, or to give in to a sexual temptation in your life, whether acting out or mentally. I'm talking about attitudes that can creep in, like pride, that wrecks our witness. You had a conflict with somebody at a family gathering in the past, and they started it. And so you say, I'm not going to be the first one to try and make it right. I'm going to wait for them. They started it. I just retaliated when they started it. And pride puffs up, and it hinders and prevents you from having a reconciliation. It's a temptation to sin. Selfishness. What about this one? Ephesians 4, 26 to 27. In your anger, do not sin. Which, by the way, is really encouraging to know. Just because you feel anger, that's not a sin. It's what you do with that anger. Do you act out on it? Do you take it to God? That's a pretty big difference. And then it says, do not let the sun go down while you're still angry. Can anybody confess with me we've done that? We've lived night after night holding on to grudges, bitterness, anger, or unforgiveness towards somebody who might not even still be alive. It says that gives the devil a foothold. Think about it. If he can get a little access point with anger, a foothold can become a stronghold, can become a stranglehold. And so the temptation to give in to sin is one of the devil's greatest strategies, but the one that might be most missed is this last one, distraction. There's a passage of scripture, 2 Corinthians 4:4, that says, the God of this world has blinded the minds of unbelievers. Which, by the way, if somebody here is not someone who believes in Jesus and is following Jesus, a lot of us are, but not everybody is, I'm sure. Even now, God might be beginning to give you a light of the knowledge of the truth of a whole nother way of life. But up until this time, you haven't seen it. It's like your eyes have been blinded and your ears stopped. It's to keep you from seeing the light of the good news of the glory of Christ. Now, here's the danger. Sometimes the enemy's strategy is not all the pain and the problems of the holidays, it's all the fun and the festivities. You keep it on the surface. And you forget about the fact that the family and the friends that you're with, if they were to die, are going to stand before God and be held account for their life, because God is perfect and pure, and he doesn't allow a little bit of murder and a little bit of hatred and a little bit of adultery into heaven. No, it's a perfect place where there's perfect relationships. So that means we're in trouble unless we've got someone who can take away our sin. That's Jesus. That's why we want everyone to know Jesus, because he can make you completely new on the inside, which then makes you have a whole different future. You're with God forever in perfection. And guess what? The holiday season creeps in. I got to get gifts for this person. I got to do this. And we got this family event. We got this family event. We're going to come here. And we don't even stop to consider the salvation of the people that we love so much. Distraction. It's not just that their hearts and minds are blinded. Maybe it's ours are blinded too. So there are many reasons why we who follow Christ need to be on guard, but I have to tell you, everybody is susceptible to his attacks. Paul speaks about this in Ephesians 2. He says, you used to live in sin just like the rest of the world, obeying the devil. It's weird. It's like he's saying that all of us, whether we realize it or not, have been on the marionette strings of the devil, doing his bidding, just reacting, following our gut, treating people the way we think we should treat them. Some of that's good because it's God's image in us. Some of it's not good and is part of the world system that's leading us to live in a way that's different than Jesus' way. In 2 Timothy 2, it also talks about escaping from the devil's trap. It talks about how he takes people captive to do his will. I'm not just talking about murderers, mass murderers, and things like that. It's the little things, the lack of love that causes us to turn a blind eye to an area of a need right around us. And so the battle, guys, is real. The struggle, though, is not against flesh and blood. And I think if you could just hear one thing as we're kind of rounding this up for today, is that you're heading into the holiday season and there's a spiritual battle, and it's never against people. It's against powers and principalities that are operating in, with, and through the relationships that happen and the thoughts that are triggered because of them. And there's two extremes with this. One is overemphasis or fixation. And that's where, you can think the devil's behind every red light and every headache and everything like that. The other is complete ignorance and avoidance. There's a book called The Screwtape Letters by a famous theologian and philosopher, C.S. Lewis. And in the preface of the book, he says, there are two equal and opposite errors into which our race, that means humans, can fall about the devils. One is to disbelieve in their existence. That's the what devil. The other is to believe and to feel an excessive and unhealthy interest in them, to become fixated on the demonic realm. They themselves, demons, are equally pleased by both errors and hail a materialist or a magician with the same delight. And he goes on in this fictional work about these two demons talking, and one of them says this: tortured fear and stupid confidence are both desirable states of mind. In other words, think about this. What if in the spiritual realm, the devil and all of his legion of demons want you to go to one extreme or the other, to just never even think about the spiritual battle, to just laugh or joke or whatever about the devil, or to live in fear, cowering, and to feel weak and vulnerable? Here's the balanced approach. Be sober-minded, be watchful. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. So this is the sobered awareness. This is the watchfulness. But check this out. We don't live in fear because what it says next. Resist him, firm in your faith, knowing that the same kinds of suffering are being experienced by your brotherhood throughout the world. And after you've suffered a little while, so it's acknowledging the reality of spiritual warfare and even the fact that it hurts and it's hard and we might not always win and the devil might get the upper hand for a minute. It says, after that, the God of all grace, who's called you to his eternal glory in Christ, he will himself restore, confirm, strengthen, and establish you. To him be the dominion forever and ever. You see, the reason the Son of God appeared was to destroy the works of the devil. And even when the enemy gets some pot shots in, sniping, even when the knife can hit us when we're not suspecting in our side, at a family gathering, and you're like, where did that come from? Out of nowhere. Here's the end game. The devil isn't stupid. He's very smart, but he's not sovereign, and he does not win in the end. We know the end of the story. And so even his attacks can be undone and reversed. And I call one more passage as the band comes up. Simon, Simon, this is Jesus speaking. Behold, Satan demanded to have you, that he might sift you like wheat. But I have prayed for you, that your faith may not fail. And when you have turned again, strengthen your brothers. Check that out. Jesus is praying that your faith will not fail in the seasonal struggles that will ensue for you. But even if you trip, look at this, when you turn back, this is the good news. The God of all grace will confirm and strengthen you, and he will use your struggle to help you help other people. This is the redeeming power of our God. And so the challenge today is this: recognize the real enemy. It's a spiritual enemy, and stand firm. I want to have you stand to your feet, and I want to invite you back next week. Today was all about a wake-up call, basically, of a spiritual battle. Next week and the week after is how do we stand firm and overcome the attacks. We're going to train you in 2 weapons that you will use. One is counter-talking or claiming the truth, and one is worship as warfare, which Caleb talked about a little earlier. I want to ask you to join me in just a word of prayer here. Lord, thank you that we can stand firm and be knowledgeable in the schemes of the devil. And even now, Lord, I believe that maybe some of us have gotten pre-warnings of snipers and traps and snares that have been set for us. Thank you that we have divine weapons that have divine power to destroy strongholds. That the enemy does not inevitably have to massacre our wholeness, our confidence, our peace, robbing us of our joy and happiness this holiday season. That it's not about our circumstances, that you can take us beyond our circumstances to an experience where we can submit ourselves to you, resist the devil, and watch him run. You, God, are faithful. You will strengthen us, and you will protect us from the evil one. And for that, we're grateful. Amen. And I'm going to invite a prayer team to